we're looking to kind of, we kind of went back kind of to our sort of our original kind of concept model that we want to get familiar with. And we really like the idea of Yelp, but we kind of think Yelp is kind of a phase 2 or phase 3 of kind of where we're at. We got to step back a little bit to kind of get there, because what Yelp did was really kind of focus on, in our kind of positive feedback loop, this was sort of step 2, if folks can see it or can't see it, was a focus on planning fun evening activities and redistributing tasks. We figured if we could make this happen, then a lot of our other problems could be solved and we could reduce some challenging behavior and develop relationships and so on and so forth. What Yelp really did was address the first piece of this, the focus on planning evening activities. I think it does a really good job of doing that, and I think it could be a really kind of neat way of kind of, you know, building that and expanding that along the way. Problem is that we've still got this task issue as a bit of a barrier. Yelp just becomes one more task that folks have to do. It may be a fun task, but if you've got all these other tasks you got to still do, then it's either less fun or you're just not putting enough kind of work into it. So we kind of went back to the drawing board in some sense, and looked at kind of the redistribution of tasks piece as sort of being maybe more of a priority. And so what we're looking at kind of doing is, and we would love feedback in terms of kind of ideas, is kind of diving right into kind of the prototype phase, and just sort of testing out some ideas. We've been talking and throwing around all these sort of big ideas. We're looking at kind of smaller ideas. Well, the really nice thing in terms of a pitch is that pretty much all of our ideas will require no funding whatsoever, and are really just about a redistribution of time, redistribution of funds in some sort, and just kind of using resources we kind of already have. In terms of sort of incentive to kind of engage in any of these activities, one thing that really came out of our ethnographies, and we had some sort of specific quotes that were really interesting, were one that always comes back to mind is wild praise from management. You never hear that. Crazy, eh? That was a statement one of our frontline staff said. And from my experience working in group homes and from the rest of my team, social praise is a super powerful incentive for staff, and it's something they don't get much of. They're pretty hungry for it, and it's not happening. If they do get it, it's the same kind of social praise we give the person served for menial things. Good job walking, good job sitting, you know. So we know the social praise is a really strong incentive and reinforcer, so if we can apply that in some sort of kind of systematic way, we think that this will be a really good way of kind of getting folks involved. And so some of the things we're looking at, I turned it off. We did have that sort of platform kind of kit kind of idea in the center, looking at that kind of as sort of a concept of just a thing that might be able to kind of move folks along. One model we were looking at, and so I don't know, some folks may be familiar with them, there's a sort of a series of books out there called Tasks Galore. And basically what it does is it takes sort of, it may sort of gear more towards children, but it takes kind of day-to-day kind of mundane activities and kind of makes them fun, and kind of, and also provides kind of some step-by-step pieces to kind of prepare them and make them kind of easier to set up. One of the big barriers for staff has been more effort in kind of going into these tasks, more to do. So if something's already kind of pre-set up for them, you know, so for example, a regular task, I kept talking about laundry, I got stuck on that. You know, if it's all sort of pre-set up with all the sort of baskets laid out and the dials there and the soap measured and all those sorts of pieces kind of prepared, and then a whole bunch of sort of other kind of components kind of written in there already for staff, then they just have to go in and kind of apply it. And then the social praise space can kind of come in on kind of both ends. And so we're looking to maybe trying that out in a couple of different ways, with a couple of different tasks, with a couple of different folks. We talked about mealtime interventions, things like a Sunday family dinner potluck, where we talked about how a lot of the reasons why we have difficulties on Mondays and Fridays is because weekends are a completely different entity. So how can we connect the weekends to the week to kind of make things a little more fun, a little more kind of connected, as it were. So a Sunday family dinner potluck might have individuals who come home from family visits with their families coming to the group home and bringing a meal item from the home, which they all really enjoy, and we all kind of share it together as sort of a Sunday kind of family dinner, and kind of trying that, and kind of trying that in a group home. We talked about dinner prep being particularly in the Carson house at Bocce, was a really neat activity that they had a lot of success with. And often the barrier seems to be that we have 2 or 3 staff in the kitchen, or we want all the staff in the kitchen and all the person serving in the kitchen and everybody making dinner, and it becomes a big mess. Why couldn't one staff and one person serve make dinner together? Let's try that. Let's prototype that and see what that looks like. What we keep seeing is a lot of these kinds of invisible barriers. So over kind of the span of time, I think of a meeting I was just at yesterday where we talked about a program having a safety plan written in 1999 for challenging behavior that hasn't occurred since then, But that document in itself has created the myth that if a person ever engages in certain activities, challenging behavior will ensue. It's been 15 years since anything has happened. And so looking at some of these kinds of invisible barriers and using us as sort of the catalyst, as being in there ourselves as different people trying to kind of cross those barriers. I had an amazing experience with one of the families who were kind of part of the kudos bit for a little bit, where a family hadn't tried asking their son to engage in an activity for 15 years of home visits. You remember this, Bobe, because they were afraid of what would of their son being aggressive, because that was the situation 15 years ago. But it's been 15 years since they've tried asking him again, and he's a completely different guy. And so we gave Mom a little bit of a nudge, stood there with her as the catalyst. Mom asked once, he said no, she shuddered. I said, just ask one more time. She asked again, he said yes, and engaged in an activity they hadn't tried in 15 years and was successful. It was like a ball game, and he wouldn't leave the house with them for home visits for the last 15 years because they tried asking twice. And so if we can try to cross some of these invisible barriers, and I'll stop, push them across these sort of things, they might see some real value in the end result. So like dinner prep, well, I'm afraid of eating dinner because he made it. Well, let's try letting him make dinner and then eat it. If you don't want it, if you like it, great. If you don't, we'll move on. So we're going to do some prototyping of, those are just a couple ideas. We're going to kind of brainstorm a bunch more and just kind of get in there and start trying things.
And then I think another key component is, I don't want to get into a whole lot, is the storytelling piece. Because I think enabling staff to be able to share those successes, and it can be really informal. We talked about technology, sort of staff's resistance to turning on a computer or checking email, but trying to find a way to capture some of these successes, and that also begins to incentivize staff to do it, because you're sharing those positive stories and really flipping the framework, right? So.
Yeah, and so that might be the center platform might be kind of collecting all of
so
these small incidences and then bundling, because that seems to be my favorite word, into stories or things.
Exactly, just that positivity piece, and I think that was sort of a key thing that we spent probably about 45 minutes talking about today, was that we realized that we had become so singularly focused on focusing on the activity that really the redistribution of whatever the task was is the activity, and then making it super engaging.
And that really needs to happen as well. Without the redistribution of tasks, there's still that the perception in the staff's head, well, when I come in, I have to do shift change, and then log notes, and then dinner prep, and then everything else that's underneath the sun. So unless we actually tackle that piece of it, as many activities and fun things as we introduce, it's just...
Yelp, I was thinking, because you guys had talked about incentives and prizes, and I was like, it might be interesting to have a reciprocal aspect where it's like prizes that houses could win for doing all these really cool things would be like tickets to see movies or like other things that involve them doing more things together.
Which was originally kind of the suggestion with one of the things that we wanted to do was like have a chef that would come in to make dinner. So like the group home that had the most reviews or whatever, and